Hey everybody, Josh, World Alternative Media here, and do not fall for the propaganda. What's happening in Iran is completely controlled by Mossad and factions of the US government and CIA. And this is something I'm going to go into today and not just prove to you, but point out the similarities we've seen in the past with Iran, with past military coups by the CIA and Mossad as we see Trump mulling attack on Iran and Greenland at the same time, and Cuba and Mexico, and further attacks on Venezuela, more attacks on, of course, Colombia and Honduras and Nicaragua. As we're seeing this stuff snowball out of control right now, as we see U.S. attacks on Syria and Yemen, as we see further attacks on Lebanon and Gaza, we need to break this down. This is not peacekeeping. And those that believe that what we're seeing in Iran is organic, well, I got waterfront property in Nebraska to sell you, my friends. Iran, Israel, and the United States all say they are ready for war. And simultaneously, Iran claims nuclear capabilities will be achieved in 24 hours, which again is part of the propaganda that led from this nonsense we've been hearing since the 90s about weapons of mass destruction in Iran. There's so much to go into here regarding how Israel and the United States government are embedded in these protests and driving these protests. We're going to go into that and more today. And my goodness, we have a lot to share with you. But before we do, I urge people to check that link below for Wave Watch 2.2. You can pre-order today, 1,250 frequencies. The link is in the description. Use code WAM, W-A-M, and you'll get over $100 off. No Wi-Fi, Bluetooth required, no EMFs, and no app required. Helps soothe your nerves, boost energy, enhance cellular function, improve sleep. Endorsed by people like Dr. Brian Artis. I urge people to go and check that link in the description for Wave Watch. Again, code WAM. And also, if you want to help support us, well, we really, really need your help right now, my friends. So thank you to those who've donated in the past. We really badly need help in this new year as we're going into all this insanity, as we get unsubscribed in mass for daring to push back against both sides of the paradigm. You guys are the only thing that's keeping us up and running. So we have a gogetfunding.com, Patreon, and Subscribe Star campaign. And of course, we have other ways that you can help us, like PayPal, Ancient Wonders Television at gmail.com. That is also in the description of our video. So we appreciate any help we can get, liking, sharing on social media, notification bell, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. That helps us as well over on Rumble and BitChute and sites like that. Now let's get into it. So Trump is mulling an attack on Iran and Greenland at the same time. Now, this has been plotted for a long time. And you might say, Josh, you've done lots of videos on Iran lately. Yes, and for good reason, because, of course, not only is the story changing, but it's also further confirming what we've been warning of for so long. Of course, just 2 days ago, we put out a video, Iran collapse is imminent. We put out before that the U.S. calling for war with Iran 4 days ago. And of course, Iran and Cuba are next. People will go, it's getting repetitive, but we have new information regularly, and it's all slapping us in the face right now. Because we are getting into a point in history right now that there's no going back from if we go into it. And it's going to get very ugly if we allow it to happen. And it starts with us as individuals. Iran, Israel, and the United States all say they are ready for war, says endoftheamericandream.com. Things are getting very tense in the Middle East. The Islamic radicals that are ruling Iran believe that the United States and Israel intend to use the mass protests that have been going on for nearly 2 weeks to try to overthrow their regime. If Ayatollah Khamenei and his top advisors reach a point where they are convinced that the Iranian government could actually fall, there is no telling what they might decide to do. Meanwhile, President Trump has declared that the U.S. is ready to take military action if the Iranians continue to kill more protesters. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned that there will be very severe consequences for Iran if Israel is attacked. If either Khamenei, Trump, or Netanyahu pull the trigger, the Middle East will erupt in flames. This could involve millions of deaths, my friends, and that's not some kind of fear-mongering. This is reality that needs to set in, because we're seeing a lot of the same kind of things that we saw at the entrance into World War II, as Iran claims nuclear capabilities will be achieved in 24 hours. Remember, Netanyahu in the 90s was telling the U.S. government that Iran will have nuclear weapons within months. And then weeks before the attack on Iran last year by Israel with Hellfire missiles shipped from the United States, Netanyahu said that they are just weeks away from getting nuclear weapons. Once attacked, he eventually reverted right back into saying, oh, well, they're months away. Said the same thing with Iraq for years. And remember, if we're going to talk about virtue here, who attacked more than 100 countries in the last 100 years? The United States government. They're going to talk peace with other countries. Who actually dropped nuclear weapons, allegedly? So that some people debate this on an actual population. The U.S. government did. Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So again, who is really valuable in speaking of this right now? Like, how can they possibly virtue signal about this? Meanwhile, we have Iran deploys military jammers to shut down access to Starlink, Forbes reports. This is after Starlink was deployed there. Of course, Elon's a huge fan of Israel. And this comes after the Iranian government shuts down the internet there and also banks and all this kind of stuff. This is something that you'll expect to see in a place near you soon with the emergency orders that they will bring in under the guise of national security in the face of chaos that they created in the first place. Again, this is not me endorsing the Iranian government. By no means am I doing that. That's absurd. They were propped up by the U.S. in the first place in the Islamic Revolution after they fought back against, because remember, all these are CIA coups, after they fought back against, the Iranian coup of 1953 and the creation of a new Shah who did brutal oppression to people as well. It's all part of the same agenda. RT says U.S. and Israel egging on foreign killers embedded in crowds, Iranian president says. Remember, the former Iranian president was murdered by Israel last year. His helicopter was shot down. They claimed it was a storm, but there was no clouds in the area. The people of Iran have a right to protest, unlike terrorists brought in from abroad, Mossad Pezeshkian has said. Now, where is the evidence of this? Well, the U.S. government and the Israeli government are openly boasting about this, as well as Israeli media. Mike Pompeo, as I reported previously, said the Iranian regime is in trouble. Bringing in mercenaries is its last best hope. Remember, Mike Pompeo is former head of the CIA. Riots in dozens of cities and the Bazish under siege. Mashhad, Tehran, Zahedan. Next stop, Baluchistan. 47 years of this regime. POTUS 47. Coincidence? Happy New Year to every Iranian in the street, also to every Mossad agent walking beside them. This is written by Mike Pompeo on the 2nd of January of this year, 2026. So he's openly acknowledging that these events, these protests, are propped up by Mossad, which explains why they're burning down mosques. And then we have this. Just in, Israeli Heritage Minister Amichai Eliyahu stated that Israeli agents are currently operating inside Iran amid the protests. Well, no kidding, Harrison Smith says. Crazy how this is happening in Iran and America at the same time. It's almost like there's some agenda by Israel to for conquest to further destabilize nations. For what reason? Well, you can come to that conclusion yourself. I believe at the end of the day, it's actually a war on humanity itself, a mass sacrifice to push us into technocracy. But anyway, Glenn Greenwald shared this. Mossad and CIA are all over Iran and fueling these protests. Even the Israeli media openly discusses this. If you don't know that, you know nothing. It doesn't mean there are no organic Iranian protests. It means the Mossad is fueling it. As the Jerusalem Post reports, Mossad spurs Iran protests as agents with demonstrators in Farsi message. And then in smaller print here, let me open this water so I can see it. As protests grow across Iran, the Mossad posted an unusual Farsi message urging demonstrators to act, saying it is with them in the streets amid rising economic pressure and public unrest. There's total admittance by Mossad, by the U.S. government as well, that they are controlling these protests. Share this with someone that claims that you're crazy for saying this, because people will say, oh, I love the Iranian regime. They're wrong. And then people will say, we need to overthrow it. These protests are all grassroots. They're wrong as well. It's the same thing with Maduro and the CIA. Maduro, terrible person. I was personally banned from Venezuela by him. I spoke out against him for more than a decade. But also, CIA, also bad. Mass murdering, child trafficking, CIA, also bad. We don't have to just support one or the other. It's good to understand that these things are all propped up by the same agenda, which, by the way, is Israel acknowledges and boasts again about how they got Trump to invade Venezuela. And we'll talk about the sonic weapons they used later on in the video, which I got a few reports on. But I posted this from Adam. This is a free Iran movement. He says this. You see this in all the protests. You see the Iranian flag with the Israeli flag everywhere at these protests. I wrote, "Do you get it yet?" By the way, another shameless plug for our X account, which is constantly unfollowed, and the algorithm is destroying us there. So make sure to follow us at World Alt Media on X. Okay, coming up next here we have Dear Khamenei, fuck your terrorist ass sincerely, and it shows this woman taking off a hijab and wearing a fuck Khamenei shirt and a short skirt. Now, look closely to the left of her. You'll see in a moment. What is that flag? What flag are they waving there? Why does this keep happening, huh? Oh, hey, it's an Israeli flag. Shocking. Why does this keep happening? Some people pointed out that she has rosary beads, much like a Catholic, and isn't actually a Muslim, and it's all set up. That could be the case, but I do think she has a cross on her wrist too, which is interesting. Muslims do carry beads, but yeah, she has a cross on. So this is all just theater. She's not Muslim at all, so I don't know what she's going on about. By the way, this looks like it's from Paris or Belgium or so. It doesn't look like it's definitely not Iran. Look at the buildings in the background. That's French architecture. But anyway, it's all theater, and people are falling for it in the media, as per usual. Both sides, both the mainstream media and the alternative media. I'm seeing everyone praise regime change in Iran, which Alan Dershowitz said to Trump weeks ago. If Trump wants a peace prize, if he wants to be known as a peace president, he needs to invade Iran and do regime change in Iran. An exact quote from Trump, by the way, from the 2024 election. We will say no more war, no more nation building, no more regime change. Well, how did that work out? How did that work out? People just keep pushing the line further and further in their support of a cult, just like they do with, the support that Obama saw with his warmongering, as people on the left look the other way as well. It's just the same old tactics, same old psyops over and over and over again. Excuse me. Anyway, Middle East Eye. Iran warns it will strike Israel and U.S. bases in response to attack on Tehran. As Trump threatens that Washington will help protesters in Iran, Speaker of Iranian Parliament warns against miscalculation. But of course, this is being stoked by design, just like we saw last year. Israeli social media erupts with calls for overthrowing Iran's government. Israeli politicians and influencers have openly welcomed the latest wave of protests, with some advocating for military intervention in order to access the Islamic Republic's natural resources. By the way, Nathaniel de Rothschild just called for a full-fledged invasion and overthrowing of the regime in Iran. Not a surprise there at all, by any means. Made some similar statements about Venezuela as well recently, which shouldn't shock anyone. Why is the Rothschild family always connected to all of these major war events? And I mean, that goes to World War II, World War I, the Civil War, the War of 1812. I mean, they aren't doing any favors for the stereotypes when they're doing that kind of stuff. And it makes sense when they work with all these banks that work directly with the Israeli government. And also, one of the first streets ever made in Israel was called Rothschild Avenue. I mean, it was a letter to Baron Rothschild that led to the agreement in the 1910s to form the state of Israel as it stands today. So again, what was that? The Balfour Agreement? The point is, why are they always involved? If they are involved, ask them questions. If you're on the side of what the Rothschilds want, you should really analyze your viewpoints, because this is what they kind of want here. So Benjamin Rubenstein on X wrote, if Iran falls, Israel will build the Zionist Reich. This is a map of the Greater Israel Project from the Nile to the Euphrates. It's been in the playbook for a long time. It's on the uniform. I'll just read what I wrote on X here. This is the Greater Israel Project that was long called a conspiracy theory, despite all the Israeli government officials openly supporting it and all the IDF wearing it on their sleeves. I did a typo there, but whatever. I hate it when I see that hours later. But yeah, I mean, this is exactly it, though. They openly acknowledge that they are doing this, that they're expanding. We had Smotrich, the finance minister, a year and 1 month ago saying next to fall will be Syria and we'll expand our borders to Syria. And then 1 month later, Assad was overthrown, just as the CIA had predicted in their paper, Bringing Arms to Bear in Syria back in 1982, which I reported on as far back as 2018, where they said their blueprint of how they're going to take over Syria, and they used HTS, formerly Al Nusra Front, Al Jalani, now called Al Shara, to take over the country for Israel, which has led to mass warfare and the torturing and killing of Alawites, Christians, and Sunnis. Now, moving on here, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel and Iran will be loyal partners once Iran is freed from tyranny. Yeah, because they'll be controlling Iran. And is that the country you want? Remember, the last like 30 times that Israel tried to take over a country led to mass Wahhabi factions, which are the antithesis to the Shia in Iran, and has led to mass terrorism and mass migration, mass refugee crises. And that has led to culture shock in all these other countries. And that has also led to the Israel saying they're justified in further attacks on all these countries because now there's Wahhabi factions everywhere that are way more extreme. Way more extreme. Iran didn't attack a country in 200 years except for the U.S. and Israel recently in retaliation for attacks on them. The U.S., on the other hand, has attacked over 100 countries in 100 years. Israel has attacked dozens and dozens of countries in that time. I mean, who is a peaceful one here? And again, this is not an endorsement of the Iranian government because they've done terrible things. They arrest journalists. They arrest people for ridiculous things. They execute people for ridiculous things. All that is bad. This isn't an endorsement of it, but it certainly isn't an endorsement of the mass murdering, child trafficking CIA and Mossad who've killed millions upon millions upon millions of people under the guise of virtue. And I know it's not a what about because I don't think either should exist, but I do think that as soon as we get the involvement of other countries, first of all, Iran's one of the top allies of Russia and China. I mean, what are we doing here? I think we know what the overall agenda is. Tommy Robinson, who, benefits from the refugee crisis by making a bunch of money off of it and being this major protester while being confused why the refugees get there in the first place while he's supporting Israel and regime change, which literally leads to that. He shared a video. This is how Iran was, and this is how Iran will be once again. Make Iran great again is something that alludes to a photo of Lindsey Graham and Donald Trump holding a hat and smiling on Air Force One. With the hat says, make Iran great again. David Icke responded, brought to you by Israel Propaganda Inc. The Shah was a violent dictator who imposed his America's will through his evil and brutal Savak secret police funded and trained by the CIA. This was then replaced in 1979 by the Islamic secret police. Iranians were under the jackboot either way. Read some history before you read your script, Tommy, for goodness sake. It's true. Again, 1953 military coup. They brutalized the region. How is this guy knows nothing about the Shah. And by the way, here is a guy who's supposed to replace the new Shah. This is the new Shah that's supposed to replace a Khomeini government. Patrick Keddington posted this from the Patrick Bet-David podcast. Leading U.S. regime change puppet candidate, the Shah, admits he doesn't know anyone in Iran and prefers his life in America. Maybe he could manage Iran via Zoom from home. And I quote, my life is here in America. My children and everyone I know are here. If I went back to Iran, what would I go back to? Reza Pahlavi from interview on November 18th, 2023, with fellow regime change royalist Patrick Bet-David. As I wrote on X, your CIA-controlled Iranian puppet. If this isn't obvious, Just like Che Guevara and Fidel Castro trading with the CIA in the U.S., just like Charles Manson, just like Netanyahu, just like we've seen with the Shah, just like we've seen with Chinese leaders in the past. I mean, my goodness, it's all propped up by the US and the West in the first place in order to create chaos, in order to eventually make an excuse or a pretext in order to shift from the West to the East in the power structure that's being created to force technocracy worldwide. Bahrain opposition leader Ibrahim Sharif given 6 months sentence for Israel criticism. Sharif has been detained for months over comments criticizing Bahrain and other Arab states' ties with Israel. Which is ironic, by the way, that Bahrain is so close to Israel. And if you remember Amber Lyon from CNN from the late 2000s, the late 2000s, I remember I talked with her at the time. She was fired from CNN or pushed out of CNN because they refused to post her documentary, which showed that this kind of collusion happening in Bahrain and the mass atrocities that Bahrain was doing to people, committing on people. She wasn't allowed to talk about it. And this is something I've been researching for a very long time here. But alas, I'm crazy. And these guys who didn't know anything about this region 5 months ago are the experts. Listen to them. They get paid the big bucks and the algorithm props them up. Such bullshit. Antiwar.com says U.S. seizes fifth oil tanker linked to Venezuela. Now, Venezuela, they're claiming Iran was training on the island of Margarita there. I've talked to people who lived on the island of Margarita personally, and they all say, I've never seen a Muslim on that island ever. It's absurd. The whole idea is stupid. Of course, this is the framing they've done, and it's the same thing that I've warned about for years with Mexico and Colombia and others, where they'll say the cartels are run by Iran, Russia, and China, and that they have a military presence in Mexico and Venezuela and all these other places, and that they are getting ready to attack the United States. It's the same thing as a Cuban Missile Crisis psyop. So, again, we are talking about further seizures of these oil tankers after they seized a Russian oil tanker and almost got in a standoff with Russian military warships and submarines. Is this bringing peace? I don't think so. InfoWars says White House amplifies shocking claim of U.S. super soldiers deployed in Maduro raid. This is crazy. They have sonic weapons and super soldiers and robots and all this kind of crazy stuff deployed in Venezuela. They shut off all the lights in Caracas by their own means. People were bleeding from the nose, collapsing to the ground, holding their head as a high-pitched sound was sounded over the capital. People were incapacitated and then killed while holding their head on the ground from these EMP and sonic wave attacks. This is already confirmed. This is the kind of warfare that we're going to say is civil and is worthy in the future, because this is going to get very dangerous very, very fast. We've already known for a long time that they have these weapons, and there's also Havana syndrome and all that kind of stuff, what we saw in Cuba years ago. But again, the fact that the mainstream use of these weapons in war is happening now, not to mention AI drones by Palantir that indiscriminately bomb people based on a robot's belief of who's good and bad, which is crazy. But like these sonic weapons on top of this, I mean, it's just so incredibly dangerous what we're entering into. And people don't seem to understand that this will eventually come down to them. If you live for another 20 years, you're going to witness hells that you've never imagined you'd witness. And it's not like I want this to be true. And people say, oh, that's fear mongering. It's about acknowledging the truth so we can make positives out of the negative. And we can't understand this stuff if we are a deer in the headlights, not understanding what's coming at us. We can't do anything about it personally if we don't know what is about to happen. Meanwhile, U.S. President Trump orders army chiefs to draw a plan to invade Greenland, Daily Mail reports. As I wrote on X, here we go. And I quote, no more war, no more nation building, no more regime change. Trump a year and a half ago. If people don't get the agenda yet, I don't know what to tell them. But I mean, the idea is a massive manufactured shift, power shift from the west to the east, civil unrest on the ground as well, demoralization of the populace, starvation of the populace, destruction of the supply chain, so they could replace it with poisonous foods on a ration line attached to a digital ID, social credit, and social, this CBDC system with the 5 year social media history mandate to enter the US right now. That is literally social credit, but they already have it on social media, which is working with the Pentagon, like XAI, in order to create, utilizing the algorithm, this new social credit system. From the collapse of the currencies to bring in CBDCs, and of course the fake cyber attacks, which they'll blame on Iran, or fake assassinations, or real assassinations rather, that they'll blame on Iran, just to create, under the guise of national security, further restrictions against the population. I don't know how people don't see all this happening. Destruction of the housing market, so you will own nothing. The takeover by BlackRock. I mean, all this is a World Economic Forum's agenda, and it leads to 15-minute cities with digital IDs under emergency orders, which the UN itself said that they can enforce with any crisis. And with the UN Pact for the Future, which 193 countries signed on to in 2024, September of 2024, it allows them to shut down your bank account if you say negative things about the narrative or the government. It allows them to force a social credit on you, force food rations, grid rations, all that kind of stuff on you. This is all the warm up, my friends, and it will happen. And on top of that, they have 63 central banks that signed on to Basel III in late 2024, which allows them to bring in bail-in regimes and just cash out your bank accounts. The banks are, by the way, bankrupt with less than 1% cash deposit ratio, trillions of dollars in derivative exposure, and inflation on top of that. I mean, this is the end game. And most people are just sitting on their hands saying, oh, we'll wait to see what happens. This is so incredibly dangerous going forward. And I hope to God that people understand what's going on so they actually take action for themselves. And, this is why for so many years, without making pretty much anything off of this at all, I've been saying, for the love of God, stock up. For the love of God, get out of the bank. Heavensharvest.com. If you go there right now, you'll get 25% off. This is an insane 25% off if you use code WHAM, WAM. Again, for long-term storable foods that are non-GMO, there's organic kits, heirloom seeds, water filtration and storage, and books on how to get started, freeze-dried food as well. This is an option for people. I really, truly want to give you guys solutions. So it's not just, oh, well, this is scary. We need to be free individuals. The basis of humanity is individualism, and this is our opportunity to get serious about this. So heavensharvest.com, go and get this today. Code WHAM, WAM. That's 25% off. Another really important one is firstnationalbullion.com/schedule-consult/. It has to be that exact link, my friends. This is your way out of the digital system. This is your way out of the CBDC, digital ID, social credit system. This is your way out of the inflation crisis and the dollar crisis. This is how you protect yourself so you aren't dependent on them later, which they depend on the dependence of the masses. Here you could buy physical gold, silver, platinum, or palladium, hold it in your hands, put it in a vault, or put it in an IRA outside of the traditional IRA system, and schedule an appointment for a free consultation with Mark Gonzalez and get a complimentary investors package with that as well. Mark does lots of videos with us, which you could check out on our channel, including our recent one on banks wanting to stop silver. I urge people to check that out. But anyway, let him know in the comments of the forum that you found him at World Alternative Media, or WHAM, WAM. There are many options out there, my friends, and I hope people take them seriously. Anyway, I hope people join us at Acapulco in February of 2026 in Puerto Vallarta. Again, anarchapulco.com. Use code WHAM, WAM, and you'll get 10% off on your tickets February 15th to 20th, 2026 in Vallarta, where I live. I'll be speaking there. And you'll also be able to see amazing speakers like Jeff Berwick, Gareth Ike, Curtis Stone, David Icke, Charlie Robinson, Greg Reese, Max Egan, Dr. Andrew Kaufman, Chris Horlocker, Christian Yordanov, Patrick Henningsen, Dan Dix. There's so many more people that will be there, and I urge people to go and check that link in the description, anarchapulco.com. And again, code WHAM, WAM. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, we have WaveWatch 2.2. You could pre-order today, 1,250 frequencies, no Wi-Fi required, no Bluetooth, and there's no EMFs. Use code WHAM, WAM, and you'll get $100 plus off. Helps you soothe your nerves, boost your energy, and enhance cellular function, improve your sleep. Of course, it's endorsed by people like Dr. Brian Ardis. I urge people to go and check that out in the links below. And of course, we have vni.life/WAM, WAM. That's Victory Nutrition International, where you could use code WAM15 to save 15% on amazing super supplements, better than anything you could get in the stores, including Protovite, which is 100 plus vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients. Absolutely amazing stuff. The before and after, I've shown you guys before, but I'll show you again. The circulatory issues in the blood beforehand are evident. Red blood cells have lost their negative charge. White blood cells are tiny. And then 5 minutes after taking it, you have white blood cells 4 times their size, restored negative charge, red blood cells freely flowing. This is 5 minutes. It usually takes a month to do something like this. It's absolutely incredible. I urge people to check that out. Again, that's vni.life/WAM, WAM. Closing it off, I appreciate any help we can get. We need it. Of course, we have gogetfunding.com, Patreon, and Subscribestar. Thank you to those who've donated in the past. We desperately need your help today. So if you can help us, thank you. It's necessary to keep our media alive so we can continue putting out free content regularly. We have Patreon and Subscribestar as well. $4.99 a month or more will get you exclusive content. And of course, we have that on X at World Alt Media as well when you subscribe for $5 a month. We have a PayPal address, ancientwonderstelevision@gmail.com, a Bitcoin address that you can scan on the screen here or check out in the description below in a text form, a Cointree link with a bunch of different cryptocurrencies that you could donate in if you please, including privacy coins, and of course, a Teespring store with a bunch of merchandise. So all that helps us, and we truly appreciate your support. You can find us on Telegram, Band.video, BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, and Brighteon at World Alternative Media. We're on Hive, Steemit, and Vigilante.tv at Josh Sigurdson. We're on the Bad Guys, TikTok and Instagram, World Alternative Media, Twitter and Getter at World Alt Media, and all the major podcast platforms except for Spotify, where, of course, we're banned. No shock there. Hit that like button, share on social media, hit the notification bell, and hit subscribe if you have not yet already. And as always, my friends, live freely, live by example, don't fall for the psyops. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.